والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا وحبيبنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. رب يسر وأعن يا كريم وافتح بالحق إنك الفتاح العليم. Just a few words about a hadith that used to be about the best known hadith of Islam, which nowadays causes many of us to scratch our heads. Unlike many of the great hadiths, the hadiths that speak about unveiled things, it's a hadith Qudsi, it's Allah's speech. روى أبو هريرة رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال فيما يرويه عن ربه جل وعلا من آذى لي وليا فقد آذنته بالحرب. This is Allah speaking, this hadith in Bukhari. Whoever harms one of my awliya, I declare war on him. It helps to reflect on definition of these terms, because all of our classical texts love the had definition. Just about every end begins with a list of definitions. But the Quran and the Hadith use terms but don't define them, but you have to figure out their sense in context. So here, what is being flagged up is the principle of the wali, the one who is in a wilaya relationship with his maker, but not as a definition. It's not these are the conditions for being a wali. Instead, it's about the practical entailments of not taking them seriously. It's very characteristic of the divine khitab. Instead of giving us a bunch of abstractions, which are probably too much for our limited minds anyway, we get something practical. It's like the Badawi who stands up during the Holy Prophet's khutbah and says, Ya Rasulullah, what do I have to do to get to paradise? And the Holy Prophet says, Ma a'adalta laha, what have you got ready for it? So instead of giving him a list of stuff, he gets the man to think laterally, and therefore the man learns, and we get a kind of perspective, not just the divine speaker through the prophetic mouthpiece and the human listener, but there's a third dimension, a third speaker, which gives us a sense of context and triangulation. The whole process of revelation is about that. The divine light refracted as if through a prism into the world of space and time. So that's how this hadith begins, not with a definition of who is a wali, which would have to be a pretty ambitious and abstract thing, but instead, what's in it for us? Why does it matter? Because if you harm them, Allah Himself declares war on you. And who can withstand the divine hostility? We don't stand a snowball's chance. So that gets our attention. These people are to be respected, and they are a protection from the divine punishment. هم أمان لأهل الأرض. And وما كنا نعذبهم وأنت فيهم. Allah says of the Holy Prophet, we're not going to punish them for as long as you are amongst them. So he is an aman, he's present in a people, wards off. It's like an armor, a force field, protecting those people despite what they were from the divine punishment. One of the consequences of walking in the footsteps of the Holy Prophet ﷺ is that one can, even unwittingly, serve as a protection for those around them. Because Allah's anger is part of the jalal, part of the reality of creation. And when He is angry, the heavens and the earth cannot stand up against His anger. We need protection because we mess up all the time. Every second we are either taking a decision or potentially taking a decision. Most of the time we're on a kind of autopilot, and when we take a decision, a lot of the motivation is to do with ego. What other people will think of us, what we will think of ourselves. How often in each day do we make a decision that isn't from the nafs or from this kind of autopilot that allows us to drift through our lives? And That's not really what we are here for. We are here to pay attention. So the wali, the one who is in this relationship, wilaya, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is also the force field that shields a particular community. And if that community starts to ignore them, the protection may still be in place. But if they start to have a go at them, persecuting them, insulting them, then who knows what catastrophes can ensue. When I was in Samarkand last summer, we were being shown around the Shahi Zinda, which is the big necropolis, great buried there. And the tour guide was just saying, we think it's a really funny coincidence that when the Soviet archaeologists in 1942 started digging in this particular grave, they found out when they stopped the digging that Hitler had just invaded the Soviet Union. So that's how we remember the date. We seem to remember that there is a cause and effect, and that Allah's eye of compassion, concern, protection is upon His awliya. If you disturb them, uproot them, desecrate them, then you don't know what adawa, what divine punishment and anger you might be stirring up. In any case, that's how the hadith begins, to make us pay attention. There is something in it for us. We have to treat these people seriously or else. And then the hadith kind of does a kind of sudden turn and moves, as is very characteristic of the revealed discourse, in an unexpected direction. You'd expect, in human speech, after this dramatic opening, if you harm these people, Allah will declare war on you, for there to be some explanation of why, who they are, how do you look out for them, how do you ward off this punishment. But that's not how Revelation works. Revelation is speaking not to the linear processes of the mind, which, if we're honest, we know are deeply frail, but is speaking to the heart, which has its own way of activating the rest of us, which is not really to do with the linear sequencing of concepts. So the next thing that he grabs us with in this hadith is about what we can do in order to do two things, as becomes clear. Firstly, how do we get this protection from the catastrophe of harming the people of wilaya? But also, how can we tread in their footsteps, because that's a path that's, by definition, open to every single mukallaf. That's where real human equality really makes sense, rather than the hopeless external definitions that the modern world seeks to apply. Real equality refers to what matters, which is access to truth. Everything else is just part of the scenery, really. And if you're obsessed with how the scenery looks, and you're not paying much attention to the journey, then you've kind of misunderstood big time. So the hadith then goes on to tell us, لا يتقرب إلي عبدي بشيء أحب إلي مما افترضته عليه. The speaker is the deity, subhanahu. My slave draws near to me with nothing more beloved to me than that which I have made obligatory upon him. And again, that's the surprise. That holds our attention as well. Why does it go in this particular direction? The mind can't figure it out, but the heart certainly has been alerted with khawf and is paying attention and discovers that there is a way. This idea of taqarrub, drawing close, indicates that there is a journey taking place. And this issue of wilaya is all about travelling. Travelling from the darkness of where we are, cobweb of illusion and shadows and distraction and wasting time by showing off to ourselves, to the calm sakina, the reality of knowing how things are. From inappropriateness to appropriateness. From sleepiness to alertness. From death to life, as you heard earlier today from Sidi Abdul Samad, the meaning of dhikr. Allah yad'ukum lima yuhyikum. Allah calls you to what gives you life. The likeness of those who remember their Lord, وَالَّذِينَ لَا يَذْكُرُونَ اللَّهَ, and those who do not remember Him. كَالْأَحْيَاءِ وَالْأَمْوَاتِ, are like the living and the dead. You can be a zombie, you can go through life apparently doing really well in your career, but your spirit's cogwheels are not engaged with the rest of you, and you're just really another part of the scenery. That's kind of being the living dead. The world is full of such zombies, but Allah, in His generosity, has given everybody the opportunity to snap out of it through the dhikr. And that's why He slaps us around with the language of revelation, scares us, because nothing less will do. Anodyne promises of a benign and fluffy existence after death are not enough for us. We need to be kicked and pushed around and frightened, otherwise we won't move. Or we won't move in a significant way. It's only fear of tragedy, or the fact of tragedy, that really makes us think twice about where we are. That's the crisis that can actually wake us up. We need a pile-up on the motorway before we can notice really what we've been doing. Did I need that journey? What was I up to? When did I last pay attention to anything? The modern world takes pleasure in making us comatose, because if you're kind of drowsy half the time, the banks and everybody else find it easier to put their hands in your pockets. If you're thinking carefully about what you really need, where you're really going, and you realise, which isn't really rocket science, that the sources of happiness are not to be found in the shopping centre, but are to be found in prayer, relationships, beauty, nature, stillness, those things. Once you wake up and realise that basic fact, then the system goes into a tailspin, because you're no longer really a proper economic unit. You're a dissident. You're looking up to heaven rather than just munching on the grass with the rest of the sheep, and you're not supposed to do that. But revelation is there to wake us up. That's why we have this language slapping us around. Beware, don't mess with Allah's awliya. And then the path, the way forwards, is indicating to us the beginnings of this mahabba principle, what Allah loves. The way in which the carrot as well as the stick now appears. But what does Allah love at this beginning of the road? Allah loves the things which He has prescribed for you. If you're a beginner and you're thinking about everything except the qibla when you're in the mosque, you can't really say that you are a manifestation of perfection which brings about the real divine love. Allah loves you for what you are called to be. And if your outward is conforming to His obedience, He will love your outward because you are in a form of prophetic perfection. But what He is loving is what you're doing, not what you are. So that's the beginning. My slave draws near to me with nothing more beloved to me than that which I have made obligatory upon him. And that's the first stage. There's no first stage other than following i'tisam, following the sunnah and following the sharia, because that's the only door there is. The outward form must be approximately clean and straight if the inward form is to stand any chance of making progress. So that's the second point in this hadith. And then it takes another kind of U-turn unexpectedly. ولا يتقرب إلي عبدي بالنوافل ولا يتقرب إلي عبدي بشيء أحب إلي مما افترضت عليه ثم لا يزال يتقرب إلي بالنوافل حتى أحبه. And then he continues to draw near to me with nawafil, optional acts, until I love him. And that's different. Because to do nawafil, especially when nobody's looking, is a sign that you're serious. Just knocking off the prayers because you've been dealing with exams or ISOC or whatever, doing the bare minimum, is to adorn yourself with the outward form of the basics, and some degree of the divine love falls upon that. But seriousness is when you start to inhabit your actions, and you're doing extra things. Many people do just the basics because they don't like to think of themselves as people who are religiously inactive. It's a kind of guilt. But the language here is still the language of love, but here it's not the actions which are the recipients of the divine love, it is the abd, the servant. So that's the next way the hadith is going. My slave draws near to me with optional acts, with nawafil, until I love him. And that's the state we want to be in. Not just Allah loving our wudu when we get it right, but loving us. There's a difference between the jinan, the inwardness, and the outward things that we do. Very big difference. You could program an android to pray meticulously 5 times a day. That's got nothing to do with ibadah. It has to percolate. It's like the rain. It can stay on the surface, or it can go deep and things can start to germinate. And very often religion kind of is skin deep with us, and inside stores the rubbish that we haven't cleared out for years. Old issues, bad habits, nonsense. But it's usually the reason for the bad mood that we get in that makes us cut corners in the first place. It's a vicious circle. We're in a bad mood, things haven't been going right, and so we're kind of lazy, or we treat ourselves to things that are either haram or kind of in a grey area. And that, again, makes us feel bad because we're unhappy that we did that, however much we may come up with smart excuses to justify it, and so we're in a bad mood again, and so we do those things, and it goes round and round, and a lot of human beings are caught like hands on a wheel, just doing that, moving from bad action to bad action, in the hope that eventually they'll come up with a bad action that does really sort them out and make them feel better. But of course, there is no such bad action. Either the heart is illuminated or it's darkened. There's no third possibility, although there are grey areas in between. So that's the next stage, point 3 in this hadith. Allah can love us. Now, love is the recognition of beauty and perfection. Ugliness can't really be loved. People don't go to the Turner Prize exhibits every year in order to experience the love of beauty. They might get some kind of egotistic buzz out of respecting some smart artist's evocation of the chaos and meaninglessness of modern life. But they're not there in order to be nourished by beauty. And if you said, what did you find that was really beautiful? They'll look at you in a slightly puzzled way. That's not what they are seeking. When they see it, when they step into some other gallery and they see what was motivating human beings 200, 300, 400 years ago, of course it still has an effect. When they step into an ancient building, they can't help but straighten themselves out and behave in a more dignified and reverent way. When they see nature's beauty, they can't help responding to that. But because there's no real wilaya within themselves, when they themselves make something, when they look and evaluate that which other people make, it's just ugliness, admiring ugliness, and that's just going round and round in that same circle. But this process of ihsan is related to husn, which means beauty. You can translate ihsan as doing what is beautiful. In Islamic ethics, we speak of al-hasan wal-qabih. We don't really speak of virtue and vice very much, although we have words for those things. Usually our text will speak in terms of al-hasan, the good act, which literally means the beautiful act, and al-qabih, the bad act, which means the ugly act. But aesthetics, the sense of beauty, which is very deeply rooted in human beings, is just another way of speaking about our ethical impulses. So, at this point, when we start to become beautiful, Allah's loving regard rests not just on our actions, but upon what's within. The heart might start to reclaim some part of that magnificence that allowed the angels to bow down to Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam, their recognition of the ahsani taqweem, the best of all forms. What were they doing? Recognizing ihsan, recognizing the magnificence of Allah's creation, a perfect manifestation of the divine names. Nowhere else in creation will you find a more perfect representation of the divine qualities than in a perfected human being. You could look at a sunset and say, well, there's the divine name Al-Jamil. And you could look at an earthquake or volcano and says, there's the divine name Al-Jabbar. You can look at somebody who's being just a perfect human being, has all of those 99 names mirrored. And that's the sir of human beings. The angels weren't bowing down to Adam, it's kind of like us, full of fire as well as clay and complexes. That's the asfala sabilin can be. That's the lowest principle of creation. That's exactly what angels are horrified by. Why should we bow down when yufsidu fiha, when human beings will corrupt in the earth, or yasfiku dima, and shed blood, do the ugliest things? And we praise you and glorify your name. But what they don't know is what's in Adam, which is this potential to have a heart that is like a mirror that can reflect those qualities of perfection that are in the divine. And love, mahabba, is nothing other than human beings recognizing some of the divine qualities in existence. When some moron teenage pop singer sings about how much she loves her boyfriend, there is an element of reality there. She has seen something in him, no matter how degraded, that is a kind of refraction of a divine quality. There isn't really such a thing as false love, unless it's simply a fabrication, claiming that you love somebody but actually you don't, because it's outside our capacity. Nobody decides to love. It's involuntary. You can't go to your fiancé and say, I've decided to love you. She'll give you what for. That's not what she wants to hear. Love is that which brings out things which are spiritual and pre-rational and involuntary in us. It is ecstasis, which means being brought out of ourselves. That's really when we become human, when we recognize the plurality, the endless number of the divine manifestations in the world. And the one who is wali is the one who sees everything as a combination of the divine qualities. And we just see them sometimes in a mixed up way. How does he see that? Because he in himself is a manifestation of that, and he has that beauty. That's why we have all of these poems about the beauty of the Prophet. It's not just about his outward beauty, it's about the beauty of perfection that can exist in Allah's Khalifa, the one who had realized the Adamic possibility of Allam al-Asma, who taught all of the names. And that's the greatest miracle in creation. The greatest ayah, the greatest sign, is the perfected or the perfecting human being. Everything else is just children's games. So just to end the hadith, then it takes another turn, another unexpected one, which kind of moves us back to the principle of what do these people do? How do you recognize that? What's in it for us? فَإِذَا أَحْبَبْتُ كُنْتُ سَمْعَهُ الَّذِي يَسْمَعُ بِهِ وَبَصَرَهُ الَّذِي يُبْصِرُ بِهِ وَرِجْلَهُ الَّتِي يَمْشِي عَلَيْهَا وَيَدَهُ الَّتِي يَبْطِشُ بِهَا. And when I love him, I become the eye with which he sees, the ear with which he hears, the foot on which he walks, and the hand with which he smiles. That, of course, sends the commentators into a kind of tizzy. How can Allah be one's eyes and ear? What is that? That sounds like some kind of incarnation. What is that? Well, there are many interpretations, but essentially what it means is that when the wali sees, he sees things as they truly are. A particular conglomeration of divine acts and qualities, rather than part of this mysterious shadow play of things influencing each other. So he sees truly. And when he hears, what he perceives is true, and what he does is in conformity to reality, his knowledge of his own state, his ubudiyya. And when he smites, when he fights, he is doing so لِإِعْلَاءِ كَلِمَةِ اللَّهِ, to uphold the word of Allah, not for some kind of egotistic turmoil. And these are all prophetic states. To be Khalifatullah, to be Allah's representative, lieutenant, however you put it, deputy in creation, is to uphold the order which is the beauty of the world, and to be somebody who conserves the memory of the original garden and pushes away the infernal, destructive, fiery forces to those who like those things, so that human beings might have a chance of experiencing the paradisal after they die. So the wali in this sense is certainly not somebody who's sitting alone. The wali is somebody who's in society, and this hadith indicates that. He walks, he doesn't just see and listen, he walks. He strikes, يَلَهُ الَّتِي يَبْتِشُ بِهَا, his hand with which he smites. And this again is part of our conception of sainthood. The wali is not the one who sees everything is in Allah's hands, everything is fine, so I shall just sit and meditate my prayer deeds. No, the wali in our tradition is an active principle. Somebody who through his actions, while knowing the divine totality, is upholding the order of creation and hence resembling ultimately that being to whom the angels could justly prostrate. And the hadith goes on to explain, and it really comes back to its starting point. وَلَئِنِ اسْتَعَاذَ بِي لَأُعِيدَنَّ وَلَئِنِ اسْتَنْصَرَنِي لَأَنْصُرَنَّ. If he seeks my protection, I will certainly protect him. If he seeks victory from me, I will certainly grant him victory. And where those people are involved in all of the public enterprises of the Ummah, whether they be social, or military, or political, or charitable, where those people are involved, things start to come right. And where those people are not involved, and religion instead is just the kind of fiery turmoil of the lower self, then nothing that the Muslims get together to do can really come right. And it just produces more disintegration and more disharmony. And that's one way in which you know, really, that the presence of divine support. Just look to see what's succeeding and is conformable to the book and the sunnah. That which endlessly brings more and more catastrophes, terrorism is the obvious example. By now the Ummah should realize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not giving those people tawfiq success. Even though He has promised Nasrul Mu'mineen to support the believers, but it doesn't support that because that's just the exclusive turmoil of rancor and jealousy and rage and all of the Jahili principles and the demonic principles that are Jahannami principles. Sometimes journalists ask me, what does the Quran say about suicide bombing? And I used to disappoint them for a long time by saying, well, of course, there's nothing like that in the Quran. But recently I said, actually, there is a verse. And they all kind of got really excited. And I said, it's تَكَادُ تَمَيَّزُ مِنَ الْغَيْظِ. Hell, the inferno, almost explodes out of rage. That's the state of the person who does that. Kind of exploding because they're so frustrated and angry and envious and enraged. And that's the infernal condition. That's the hamiyya of the jahiliyyah. It's nothing to do with the sakina, the taslim of Islam, which acts in the total knowledge that it is Allah who is truly acting and who is never panicked by the reality of creation. And that's part of the degree of wilayah as well. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us to move from automatic religion to real religion, so that we may be people who are perceivers of beauty and people who are signs of beauty, so that there can be, once again, little gardens in this age in which everybody is in a fiery, infernal way, obsessed by their desires. Barakallahu feekum. Assalamu alaikum.